Before you laugh at a stranger, before you belittle a soul who walks humbly through your world, remember this: the walls you mock someone against today might become your prison tomorrow. In every cruel word, every judging glance, you carve your own downfall. Tonight, you'll witness a story where arrogance sowed the seeds of destruction, and kindness, the very thing they despised, rose like a crown. Watch carefully, because sometimes karma doesn't knock. It kicks the door off its hinges. Under the scorching Dallas sun, the chrome and glass of Halston Motors gleamed like a temple for the elite. Inside, the scent of leather and power floated through the air, mingling with the distant echo of soft jazz piped through ceiling speakers. Men in tailored blazers leaned over engine specs, and women with diamond bracelets pointed at price tags that read more like home loans. Then the door opened with a soft chime, and she walked in. Nia Thompson. Tall, poised skin kissed with deep bronze. Her blouse was crisp but plain, her jeans a little faded, and her sneakers told stories of miles walked with dignity. Her natural curls peeked beneath a rust-colored head wrap, and in her eyes was the kind of calm that made storms feel embarrassed. She didn't flinch at the stares. She looked up, scanned the room, and walked forward with quiet grace. 1 step, 2 steps. And then, the murmurs began. Behind the front desk, a young receptionist with acrylic nails stopped typing mid-keystroke, her brow lifting in practiced condescension. 2 salesmen by the corner coupe exchanged a glance, then a chuckle. Lost one whispered, "She's got to be delivering something." The other replied, adjusting his cufflinks. Nia approached the nearest display vehicle, a gleaming obsidian SUV with chrome rims and camel leather interior. Her fingertips brushed the hood. Then a voice cut through the air like static. "Can I help you?" It was Greg Halston himself, stepping out of his glass-walled office, his Rolex flashing under the showroom lights. His smile was tight, practiced and painfully forced. Nia turned. "I'm interested in a test drive," she said. Her voice was even, her posture straight. Greg blinked. "You want to test drive the Valiant Platinum Series?" Nia nodded once. "Yes." He laughed. Not a belly laugh. No, a clipped exhale like disbelief had taken physical form. "Well, the Platinum is top of the line," he said, "usually reserved for serious buyers. But of course we're happy to answer questions." A man browsing a sports car nearby smirked. The receptionist stifled a giggle. Nia didn't move. "I'm a serious buyer," she said. Greg's eyes flicked to her shoes. "Of course you are," he muttered almost reflexively. "But loud enough. Loud enough for others to hear." Nia folded her arms. Her eyes didn't waver. She didn't need to explain herself. But the room had already made its judgment. Greg stepped closer, his cologne thick, his smile thinner than ever. "Let me get someone to assist you," he said. But the way he said it felt like a warning, like a leash he intended to snap. He turned to an employee across the floor, a younger man named Cody, who wore ambition like a cheap cologne and prejudice like a badge. Cody helped this young lady with her questions. Cody swaggered over, eyes scanning Nia from head wrap to soles. "Hey there," he said, his voice syrupy and smug. "Looking for something in a more affordable range? We've got a few used compacts in the back. Real easy on gas." Nia looked him dead in the eye. "I'm here for the Valiant Platinum," she said again. Steady like truth. Cody whistled low. "Big dreams. Well, I guess dreaming's free." From the reception desk came a snort of laughter. The other salesmen weren't even hiding their grins now. One whispered something to the other, who pulled out his phone and pointed it toward her camera, angled just enough to capture her frame against the shining cars. First time in a dealership, Cody added, walking around her like a guard dog, eyeing her head wrap like it was a red flag. Most folks come dressed to buy, not to beg. Greg reappeared, arms folded, smirking now. "Listen, miss," he said, tone firmer, colder. "We have a reputation here. A clientele. We cater to certain expectations. Maybe this just isn't the place for you." Nia's hands clenched into fists at her sides, not in rage, but in resolve. "I'm not here for your expectations," she replied. "I'm here for a car." Her voice echoed louder than the idle engines. A woman in heels gasped, theatrically whispering, "Is she serious?" Cody shrugged. "Could be one of those YouTubers doing a social experiment," he said, trying to catch a gotcha moment. Laughter rolled like thunderclouds in a porcelain sky. "She probably Ubered here," someone muttered. "Bet she thinks test driving means taking selfies in the front seat." The receptionist pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. "Valiant platinum girl," she typed, already imagining the likes. Nia turned, walking to the SUV again, placing her hand on the driver's door, like she belonged there, because she did. But Greg was done playing nice. He snapped his fingers. "Vince," he called the security guard, barrel-chested and bored. Looking appeared from behind a column. "We've got someone loitering," Greg said loudly. "Escort her out." Nia turned to him, her jaw tight. "Loitering?" she asked. "You haven't even asked for my ID?" Greg sneered. "Don't need to. I can smell a pretender from a mile away." Vince stepped forward, his hand hovering near her elbow. "Please don't make a scene," he said low and rehearsed. But the scene had already been made. Phones were up. Faces were amused. No one intervened. No one questioned. And when Vince placed a firm hand on Nia's arm, leading her toward the glass doors, the only thing louder than the silence was the sound of her dignity being stripped away by every stare, every chuckle, every assumption. Outside the sun still blazed, but the chill in her bones came from the frost inside Halston Motors. Nia stood on the dealership steps, the heavy glass doors clicking shut behind her, the laughter still echoing like ghosts trapped inside. Vince crossed his arms, guarding the entrance like a bulldog who had chased off a threat, while Greg leaned casually against the frame, smirking like a king who had defended his castle. Cody snapped a final photo from inside his phone, capturing her against the backdrop of luxury vehicles she was never supposed to touch, never supposed to even dream about. The receptionist laughed as she uploaded the video to her Instagram story, adding a caption dripping with cruelty. "When window shopping goes wrong, stay in your lane, sweetheart." Across the lot, a group of customers sipping complimentary cappuccinos turned to watch the spectacle unfold, their designer sunglasses reflecting the sun, and their disdain in equal measure. She thought she could afford a platinum, one woman said, shaking her head as her bracelets clinked like chains. "Bless her heart," another added, laughing into her latte. Greg cupped his hands around his mouth like a carnival barker. "Hey, sweetheart," he called mockingly, his voice slicing through the heat. "Public bus stops that way. Unless you're waiting for an Uber you can't pay for." The words hit harder than a shove, but Nia stood still, spine straight, her hands loose at her sides. She refused to flinch, refused to show them the cracks they wanted so badly to see. Vince, emboldened by the crowd's snickers, stepped toward her again. "Come on, lady, don't make it worse. This ain't the place for pity parties." A teenage boy in designer sneakers pulled out his phone and started live streaming, narrating between chuckles. Yo, check it out, broke girl. Got kicked from Halston Motors dreams. Cost money, honey. Comments flooded the feed within seconds. Laughing emojis, jokes about credit scores, hashtags like broke ambition and stay in your lane. Inside the showroom, Greg and Cody fist-bumped proud architects of her humiliation, convinced they'd taught another lesson about where people like her belonged. Nia's heart pounded, but her face remained serene, a marble statue against a storm of mockery. A woman in pearls dropped a crumpled napkin at Nia's feet with a smirk. "You missed a spot, sweetheart." She said another man, grinning wide enough to show gold-capped teeth, mimed holding out a dollar bill. "Here, a little something for your bus fare." He jeered, the gesture slicing sharper than the August air. Nia inhaled slowly, letting the breath settle deep in her chest, anchoring her against the tide. She looked past Vince, past Greg, past the sneering faces, and fixed her gaze on the horizon, beyond the sparkling cars, beyond the glittering pretense of superiority. She knew something they didn't. She carried a truth they couldn't even imagine. And as the sun blazed hotter, and the laughter swelled, as the weight of their scorn pressed harder, Nia didn't move. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She simply weighted her silence louder than all their cruelty combined, because she knew what was coming next would turn their world upside down. The sound of tires crunching gravel silenced the snickers before anyone understood why. Heads turned as a black Rolls-Royce Ghost, polished to a mirror sheen, glided into the lot with the poise of royalty, arriving at a battlefield. Its windows were tinted, its plates private, its engine a whisper of wealth so deep it didn't need to roar. Vince's smirk faltered. Greg straightened up. Cody lowered his phone. The receptionist stopped mid-laugh. The car rolled to a stop in front of the dealership's main entrance, and for a moment, no one moved. Then the driver stepped out, a tall man in a crisp navy suit and white gloves, and walked to the back to open the door. Out stepped a man every executive in the Midwest had heard of, but few had met a name, whispered at country clubs and boardrooms, a shadow of wealth whose presence turned markets. Walter Langston. He stood tall, dark-skinned like Nia. His salt and pepper hair perfectly groomed his presence alone, enough to command the entire lot into silence. Greg blinked. No freaking way, he mumbled, suddenly aware of every sweat bead on his brow. Walter didn't look at him. He didn't look at the showroom or the luxury vehicles on display, or even the crowd gathered like flies around a flame. He walked straight to Nia. His stride was calm, but each step echoed with thunder. "Nia," he said, his voice low but warm. "I'm sorry I'm late." Her eyes softened, a flicker of gratitude passing between them, and she nodded without saying a word. He turned to Vince and Greg, his smile cold as steel. "Is there a reason my daughter was standing outside like she doesn't belong?" Vince's mouth opened, then closed. Greg tried to speak, but nothing came out. Cody stepped backward, his face pale. Walter's eyes narrowed. "You didn't recognize her," he said almost to himself, "even though her face will be on the holiday campaign this year. You thought her skin, her clothes, her silence meant she was beneath you." He reached into his blazer and pulled out a document embossed with the dealership's crest. He handed it to Vince, who took it with shaking hands. "As of this morning," Walter continued, "I'm the new majority owner of Halston Motors. This location is under my personal management. My name is on every contract, every title, every square inch of this building." Gasps rippled through the crowd like aftershocks. A woman in heels stumbled backward into a showroom door, The teenager live streaming whispered, "Oh my God," before ending the video in pure panic. "You mocked the owner's daughter," Walter said calmly. "You publicly humiliated her, and you did it with pride." He turned to the showroom, raising his voice just enough for everyone inside to hear. "And every one of you laughed. You watched it happen. You encouraged it. You filmed it. You shared it." Silence. Utter, agonizing silence. Then he added each word, a dagger. "Effective immediately. This dealership is closed for internal audit. Everyone's employment is under review. Every face I remember is on that list, and Nia will decide who deserves to stay." Greg's knees nearly buckled. Vince looked away. Cody whispered, "I'm so sorry." But no one was listening. Walter turned to Nia once more. "Come on, baby," he said gently. "Let's go inside. We've got a lot to clean up." She nodded and walked past Vince and Greg, their eyes fixed on the pavement, their superiority turned to ash. As the doors swung open and Nia stepped into the building, they tried to keep her out of the truth, settled like thunderclouds over their heads. Her father's name wasn't just on the building. It was etched into every foundation they'd tried to stand above her from. And now, it was her world. They just lived in it. Inside the gleaming showroom, the atmosphere shifted from smug superiority to suffocating dread as Walter and Nia crossed the polished marble floor, the heavy silence broken only by the soft tap of their shoes. Employees who had moments earlier snickered and whispered, now averted their eyes, their faces pale, their laughter, a ghost dying in their throats. Walter stopped at the center of the room, his presence like gravity itself, and lifted a hand signaling to the dealership's general manager, who stood trembling by the office door. Mr. Donahue, a man who had once bragged about running the tightest ship in the region, stepped forward stiffly, his clipboard clutched to his chest, like a shield. Walter's voice cut through the heavy air, cold and final. "You're relieved of duty effective immediately." Donahue sputtered, his face turning a deep shade of red. "Sir, please, it was a misunderstanding. The staff, they..." Walter raised a single eyebrow, and Donahue's words shriveled mid-sentence. "The culture of a place starts at the top," Walter said evenly, "and this rot stinks of you." He turned to the receptionist, the same woman who had smirked at Nia's shoes. "Pack your things," he said simply. She blinked back tears, but obeyed her heels, clicking like gunshots against the floor. Vince tried to melt into the crowd, but Walter's gaze pinned him, where he stood. "You too," Walter said. "Your contract is terminated for cause." Greg opened his mouth but shut it again, when Walter's eyes met his. "And you," Walter said almost softly, "you're barred from reapplying anywhere under Halston Motors Group permanently." The floor beneath Greg seemed to tilt as he swayed on his feet. Cody dropped his phone, the clatter loud and final, as Walter added, "Every recording, every laugh, every cruelty you thought was harmless will be reviewed and documented." Security guards in navy suits emerged from the back rooms, summoned earlier by Walter's assistant. They began escorting the terminated employees out, their faces, broadcasting shame and panic in equal measure. The customers inside, who had witnessed the earlier humiliation, began to whisper their excitement, curdling into discomfort as they realized they were complicit too, their chuckles and camera phones now damning evidence. Nia stood silent beside her father, her arms crossed over her chest, her chin lifted with quiet, devastating dignity. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply watched justice roll down like thunder. Reporters arrived within minutes, drawn by rumors spreading like wildfire across social media. The footage from Cody's now deleted live stream had already gone viral headlines, flashing across screens in bold type. Daughter of billionaire owner. Humiliated at own dealership. The PR disaster for Halston Motors would be swift and brutal. Walter gave a brief statement outside the glass doors, his hand resting protectively on Nia's shoulder. "This dealership will reopen," he said, his voice unwavering. "But it will reopen under new leadership, with a culture that values every customer and every employee equally regardless of appearance, color, or background." The cameras clicked furiously, the reporters jostling to capture his every word. Greg Vince Donahue and the others were left outside the gates, their faces ghost white as the world they thought they ruled, without consequence, crumbled around them. Lawsuits loomed. Reputations shattered. Careers ended in real time, and it was only just beginning. Nia's face, once the target of whispered jokes and sideways glances, was now the image of justice plastered across every screen. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her existence, her perseverance, her triumph said it all. The reckoning had come like a tidal wave, sweeping away the rot, leaving only the hard, clean stone underneath. And from that stone, something new, something better would rise. Months later, the once tainted dealership stood, transformed a beacon, not of luxury alone, but of dignity and second chances. The glass windows gleamed under the summer sun, but inside the changes ran deeper than any polish could show. Nia walked the newly carpeted floors, now not as a silent guest, but as the heart and voice of the place, her presence woven into its rebirth. The staff were different now, no longer hired for charm or pedigree, but for character, for empathy, for the kind of grit that couldn't be faked. The new manager, Mrs. Clara Jensen, a woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair and a history of mentoring young people from underserved communities, led the team with fierce compassion. Walter visited often, but he didn't need to supervise. He trusted Nia, and the new crew trusted her too, not because of her last name, but because of how she listened, how she saw them. Where laughter once sounded sharp and mocking, now it rang clear and warm. Every customer who walked in was offered the same smile, the same respect, whether they wore designer suits or worn sneakers. One Saturday morning, a young black woman named Danielle stepped onto the lot, her hands trembling around a battered purse. Nia spotted her, instantly remembering herself in every uncertain step. She walked over with a grin that could melt mountains and said, "Welcome home," in a voice that made Danielle burst into tears, because no one had ever said that to her in a place like this. Danielle left that day with a gently used sedan, financed fairly, and with the keys came something rarer, the feeling that she mattered. Stories like Danielle's multiplied. The lot became less a place to buy cars and more a place to remember what people deserved. A mural now stretched across one wall, vibrant and alive, painted by local artists. It showed a black woman lifting a child high into the air, a Rolls-Royce in the background, but the focus was not on the wealth. It was on the joy, the freedom, the future. Walter watched the transformation with pride, but he knew the real architect was Nia. She didn't just change the dealership, she rewrote its soul. When the press tried to spin a feel-good redemption story, Nia declined interviews every time. She said the story wasn't about her. It was about the ones still walking through doors, wondering if they would be seen. 1 year to the day after that infamous afternoon, the dealership held a block party. The streets alive with food trucks, music, and families from every walk of life. No speeches, no ribbon cutting, just people laughing and living together. As the sun set, painting the sky in fiery gold, Walter stood with Nia near the front steps, his arm slung casually over her shoulders. "You did good, kid," he said, and Nia smiled, not for the headlines, not for the vengeance, but for the quiet revolution that now hummed in every handshake, every sale, every child running across the showroom floor, without fear. In a world obsessed with status symbols and surface gloss, this small corner of Chicago remembered the truth. That respect doesn't wear designer labels, and kindness isn't measured in price tags. Somewhere far from the flashbulbs and forgotten scandals, a father looked at his daughter and knew she hadn't just survived humiliation. She had turned it into a home, a legacy not of wealth alone, but of unwavering worth, and that would outshine any Rolls-Royce, any fortune, any fleeting headline. Because real change rolls slower than luxury cars. But when it comes, it carries the whole world forward. They thought they were kings and queens in a castle built of sand, but they never saw the tide coming. Nia's silence wasn't surrender. It was the gathering of a storm destined to tear down their illusions. When her truth was revealed, it didn't just shatter their pride. It exposed the rot they thought they had hidden under luxury and titles. If this story chilled your bones, if it made your chest tighten with anger or awe, then don't let it fade. Let it haunt you. Let it brand itself into your choices. Because the next time you stand before a stranger, you won't see just their clothes or their skin. You'll remember greatness. Often walks quietly, right before it changes everything.